Well, back again, another video. It's been a little while. I was starting to get into more of a rhythm, making videos, but like I said in the last one, getting this paperwork done to try to evict this tenant who's barely paid rent for, well, not even a month and a half for the whole year so far. I'm not good at paperwork, and I had to keep going back, making sure things were correct, finding extra supporting documents and evidence, and oh, it took me a bunch of days, and it beat me down. It beat me down. But if you get beat down, you got to get back up. You got to keep pushing, and maybe keep fighting. At the end of my last video, said peace. Remember that. But especially when people are taking advantage of you or pushing you around, or even when life is beating you down a little bit, you're going to have to fight sometimes. You're going to have to be resilient. You're going to have to push back. So I got beaten down by this paperwork a little bit, but it's done for now. We'll see. Could be a few months for it to come through. It shouldn't take so long. It shouldn't be so difficult. There are many reasons why a landlord might want to get rid of a tenant. But if it's a question of not paying rent for months and months and months and months, it should be quick. It should be simple. And again, landlords should have more autonomy to take care of their property and their investments in the way that they see fit. But things are incredibly skewed in Ontario as far as landlord-tenant laws and mediation, and it's pretty much completely one-sided. Very little reason for someone to do what they should, to pay rent, and leave when they're asked. You know, it is what it is, and the process has begun. So, wish me luck. I'd like it to be swift and effective. Just move on with my life, because it's been a big drain. Been a big drain on the small amount of savings that I had. So to introduce these red flags, the first thing I want to say is I made a video pretty recently that had a poem in it about coin flips, about something being true or not true, and about holding open possibility, not collapsing your superposition too soon, which is a very useful approach to truth at this very uncertain time in history, but also especially if you're going to be engaging with your intuitive faculties or other intuitive forms of information gathering, divination and whatnot. You might have to be careful at times not to be too certain if your truth is just purely based on intuition. But at a certain point, with enough dings of the intuitive ring, with enough red flags, which are ultimately intuitive signs, as they pile up, you better start paying attention and taking action. So let me see if I can link that video here. Have a look at it, at least the beginning, with the poem and the response poem that I wrote more recently about holding open possibility, standing on the edges of potential. So that's the first thing. I wanted to take responsibility myself, because one of the main topics in this stack of red flags is unfaithfulness and violating the trust in a relationship. I have two experiences where I pretty clearly violated a trust of the woman that I was connected to, dating, in a relationship with. The first one was a woman that I dated in high school. She was my first girlfriend. I dated her in grade 9. We broke up. I dated her in grade 11. She had some of those narcissistic tendencies and was pretty wild and untrustworthy, I guess, in some other ways. But, you know, the wildness made for good sex. But we fought a lot. She would, I guess, she liked to provoke. She liked to tussle. And so during one of our tussles, it got very heated and we broke up. As far as I understood, we broke up on the phone. Now, I was going to a party that night. I went to the party, and in my mind, I was clear. I was within my rights to engage with other women sexually. And I had a friend that I had a connection with for a long time. I never would have done anything unless I felt it was fair and I wasn't violating that commitment. But in my mind, I was free. And I was kind of sick of this woman's shit a little bit. So I made that move and I hooked up. I had sex with this friend of mine. Now, the next day, spoke to the woman that I'd been dating for a while, and we got back together very quickly. It was one of those just brief things. Now, she was kind of dishonest and very manipulative. She said, in her mind, there wasn't a breakup. It was very clear to me, and if I had any notion that we were still attached, I wouldn't have done it. But there's a disagreement on that, and I explained the whole situation the next day. I just couldn't hang on to it. It goes so deeply against my values, and it just, values aside, it's gross. It makes me uncomfortable. It's weak to cheat. You know, it's why I did it. You know, in hindsight, I don't think it's an excuse. Again, as far as I understood, I was broken up. I was within my rights, but it did hurt this woman. It did hurt this woman, and I do regret that aspect of it. So that was the first personal experience that I had being responsible for a violation of trust. And the second experience was a little more murky. This woman that I dated in grade 9 and grade 11, we were long-term and committed. Now, she was very manipulative. She, at a certain point, stepped out of the relationship. That was my first experience with being cheated on. But we were committed. It was clear. And maybe, I don't know, 15 years ago or so, I dated someone else. I dated another woman that I didn't have that conversation with. We dated for a number of months. There was no clear communication that we were committed, that it was a serious, capital R relationship. Now, I wasn't trying to go out and hook up with other people, really. Like, after maybe the first month or two of spending time with this woman that I dated about 15 years ago, I'd had like one experience with juggling people, and a relationship with one woman was enough for me, and I just found it stressful. I didn't enjoy it. So I wasn't trying to get numbers. I wasn't trying to hook up with people. I wasn't, doing anything on the sly. But I did have an ex-girlfriend. I had an ex-girlfriend that we had great sex, and this ex-girlfriend is actually the person that showed me that I never wanted to be in a long-distance relationship. After dating the ex-girlfriend, I don't know, 20 years ago maybe? A little under 20 years ago. For a little while, she moved to Winnipeg. And very quickly, I realized that the long-distance relationship was fraught with stress and trouble, and we broke up, and that was very unpleasant probably for both of us. But the sexual connection was still there. We remained, friends or something like that. And when this ex-girlfriend that moved to Winnipeg would come back to Toronto to visit, I was one of the people that she was still connected to. And so we would spend time together, and most of the time we'd hook up and have some great sex. That continued for a while. But this woman that I was dating about 15 years ago, just dating, again, didn't have the capital R title. But I was into her. I was committed to her. It would have naturally progressed into a monogamous relationship, but we didn't have the talk. And this ex-girlfriend visited for Christmas once, and I let her stay at my place. And after Christmas activities wrapped up, it was just her and she made a move on me. She came in and she kissed me, and it was nice. We had a good sexual connection. I let her kiss me, but at a certain point, I had to stop because I knew that it was not fair, even though that official talk hadn't happened with the woman that I was dating at that point when the ex-girlfriend visited. I just knew it wasn't fair. I knew that there was some violation of trust. It was murky. Was I within my rights? I think it was a dishonorable thing to do, even to really receive the kiss for as long as I did. But I did, and at a certain point I stopped, and I made it clear that I couldn't do that. I couldn't cross that line any further. Now, this ex-girlfriend was staying at my place overnight. She was going to go back to Winnipeg at a certain point, and I was living in the basement at that stage, and so we retired to go to bed, and this ex-girlfriend started coming onto me very strong and pressuring me very heavily for more sexual interaction. I think it was some way to feed her ego. Maybe she hadn't got any in a while, if you know what I mean. And I think it was a self-esteem thing. We had had this long tradition, the ex-girlfriend and I, of hooking up when she came into town. And she really wanted to get with me. She eventually got to pleading and crying. She was sobbing, trying to tell me that she needed that connection, she needed that validation. And I resisted and I resisted, and I wasn't about to kick her out on the street. And I wanted to have sex with her, but I knew that it was a bad idea. And so we went, she eventually got me to cave. She eventually worked her way to a particular position, and I didn't go all the way, but we had, Bill Clinton sexual relations, if you understand what I mean. And after it was done, and I made it clear that it wasn't going to go any further than that, I knew that I had made a mistake. A big mistake. And soon after that, again, I don't like to hold on to secrets or things that are relevant to people that might affect them and their emotions negatively. It goes against my principles, but I feel bad about it. I don't like it. It makes me extremely uncomfortable. It makes me a little nauseated to hold on to secrets. So I told the woman that I had been dating for a number of months, that this ex was over, about the history, and about the level of sexual connection that we had. And that woman that I was dating for a number of months was very upset about it, and understandably so. If I was in her position, I probably would have been as well. I tried to explain and defend myself. Oh, we haven't had the talk about being a committed monogamous relationship, and I don't know that I said the word excuse, but in my mind I was defending myself and my actions, but it was bullshit. There was no defense. It was a mistake. It was weak. And I hurt her. I regret that. I do. It had a long-term effect on the rest of the relationship with this woman that I was dating at that point. It was something that kind of was always in the space, in the field between us for the rest of the time that we were connected. And, I paid for it. And obviously, because of the negative emotional effect on this woman, she paid for it too. So those are my two experiences with violating trust in a relationship. And, I guess in the first one, as far as I was concerned, it was totally fair. And because that first girlfriend that I was dating was such a bitch sometimes, it felt good to feel that freedom. Oh, I was free. It's like I have legitimate permission to go out and connect with other women. But even in that case, maybe I should have waited a little longer. And in that initial relationship, I paid for that too. Both of them are some degree of regretful action. And again, cheating, violating someone that you care about, especially someone you love, violating their trust, is wrong. It's just wrong. We come up with all sorts of excuses, but it's not right. Before I get on to this list of red flags with the woman that I just recently dated, I don't know what this woman that I broke up with less than a few months ago is up to at the moment. I sent my text to break up with her in early August. I don't know, a week, maybe less than a week later, close to mid-August, this woman came over and rushed around the house and frantically picked up her, or most of her stuff at least. I walked with her and was patient and very grounded. I was trying to help her ground herself, to see if she had anything to say, wondering maybe if she would address some of these red flags that I put together here, that I had in my mind at the time, to see if she would stand up for the relationship, try to fight a little bit for what seemed like a significant decade-long commitment. But this woman just rushed around the house and seemed very guilty, apologized many times, only spoke about one thing, the moving to Montreal, without my full consent as the reason she was apologizing, but she seemed sorry. A lot more sorry than just for that one reason, but she wouldn't speak about it. She didn't really speak much at all, and she seemed very nervous. So she had these narcissistic tendencies, and I think she lied. At least little lies, maybe bigger lies, maybe even bigger lies. She had a mask, and I think I only occasionally saw who she really was behind that mask. It seems that these women with narcissistic tendencies like control, like to play a role, and like to keep the men that they are dating small and less powerful than them. It seems like a pattern, according to the research looking into other men that have been in a similar situation. So I don't know what this woman is up to. I haven't heard from her. It's kind of surprising. It's sad, but the truth is, I maybe never really knew, or at least in the last few years, I might not have known who she was. The person that I loved and that I thought I knew, that I thought I was dating, might have been an illusion, a veil, might have just been one of her masks. She never provided any of that clarity. She never justified herself or explained anything. So let's get on to the red flags. The first one that I'll talk about is I have this reputation around the city, especially in the neighborhood, but it's strange. I don't know the source of it. It's negative. At least in some cases, people seem to find something comedic, I guess. They seem to recognize me. In other cases, maybe I'm just, I don't know, walking my path and shining a certain light that's irritating people's demons, and people don't quite understand it, so it makes them uncomfortable. And when people are uncomfortable and they don't understand why, their worst nature will cause them to punish others, rather than try to understand or ask questions or just mind your business. It's quite a common affliction in modern day, where everyone thinks they know it all. But I have this reputation, and I don't know. It seems like somebody, whether it's neighbors or friends that didn't have my best interests at heart, or family members, or maybe this woman, we're talking some shit. We're maybe lying, maybe exaggerating, or whatever, framing me negatively as I've been going through the hardest challenges of my life and traversing the underworld to try to help and save my mother from the extreme of suffering that she might have faced without me, and also, helping my father in the midst of his shorter path through the underworld while I was unfortunately battling interference from his wife. So I'm kind of sick of being mistreated by some people around me that are supposed to love me, and also by others that I don't even know, treating me like I've done something wrong when I've barely spoken to anybody. So I can't have really done anything wrong other than look at people and try to say hello or speak to them in some sort of way. But there is this commonality that some of these men that I've listened to speak about, where these women with narcissistic tendencies will wear their mask with the man, but when the man's not around to friends or family or anyone that will listen, they will talk some shit. They will trash the man, and maybe wear a different mask or no mask at all, I don't know, but will act differently and almost opposite in some cases. And this is a sort of a tactic. Even in some cases it might be an unconscious tactic, but a tactic to disempower the man and maintain a sick form of control. So as I was trying to explain to this woman that I was dating that I was confused and disconcerted and really tired of this reputation that seems to follow me, that I had no concept of what was said or who said it or why I was being treated this way, this woman would change the subject. She would downplay it. She would gaslight me. I know that's a popular term that people are sick of hearing, but she would very clearly question a reality that was undeniable to me from all the negative reactions that I was getting from people noticing me, and then not, when I noticed them, not wanting to engage or having some kind of derisive comedic response like little kids snickering or something like that. But that's the kind of thing that some of these men that were in recovery from a narcissistic relationship with a woman had noticed, that there was this reputation that their image had been destroyed. They had been slandered by maybe the person that they were supposed to love the most and was supposed to love them. In explaining all of this to this woman, before I really kind of put all the dots together to realize that she was not right for me and didn't have my best interest at heart, I said to this woman, I'm sick of this reputation. I'm sick of telling people that are supposed to care about me about it and not getting support, not feeling like people would want to stand up and defend my name. And in that energy, I wanted to break free. I wanted to feel self-sufficient. I didn't want to have to rely on the validation of others. I wanted to learn to love myself more so that it was not dependent on the perception of others, especially those around me that were supposed to care. Now, this woman, in response to me expressing this a few times, said, "Oh, that could be dangerous." And just the way that she said it, it piqued my intuition. It just sounded weird. The emotion that she said it with, it sounded like there was some connection, some pressure, something that she was aware of that I wasn't. Again, maybe connected to this reputation, maybe connected to whatever this woman was saying or doing that I was not aware of, that might be dangerous to me. I don't quite understand why she said that, but it was a very acute emotional response that she had when I said that. And it wasn't the kind of thing that was like, "Oh, I hope we don't break up, but yeah, learn to love yourself, you know? Self-reliance is very important. More people should strive for that, you know?" I mean, I feel like that's what I would try to offer someone. I wouldn't say, if she said that to me, I wouldn't want her to just break up with me and go off and be on her own. But I would want her to find self-love. I would want her to be self-reliant if she felt that she didn't have that. I would want her to be less dependent on the perception of others for her self-worth. I think a lot of us could work on that. That's what I'm working on. And again, a couple of months, barely a couple of months, and I've made incredible progress. I've made more progress in a couple months after I let go of this person that was draining me and not giving back than I've made in years and years, even before my mom got sick. I was trying to improve my life. I was trying to figure out what to do and worked on it for years and years. And, you know, I was lucky. I had a comfortable life, but just in barely a few months, I've made more positive changes to my organization, my fitness, my diet, my mental health, my productivity than I have in years and years and years before that. It's quite incredible. And I'm finally trusting myself and learning to find that self-love. Long overdue. You can do it too. So I spoke a little bit about spell work and this kind of thing. It's still having that as a real reality that people need to worry about is still very new to me, but it's a topic that comes up a lot in tarot, which is, it's what I'm watching a lot of the time or have on in the background, on YouTube, because I like to have some kind of sound or something going on in the background as I'm working through my day, and I like the vibe that a lot of the tarot readers create. So that's what I've been consuming, and it's a lot more healthy than a lot of the other crap that I used to consume on streaming platforms. But one of the themes that keeps coming up is nasty karmic assholes doing some kind of spell work on other people. In some cases, the people that are close to them or that they love or whatever. Maybe it's jealousy, maybe it's greed, whatever it is. The sins abound these days, but people be bibbity bobbity booing, right? And so I was watching an anime with this woman that I broke up with recently, within the last few months before I broke up with her. It was to do with wizards and evil wizards, and I made a comment about love spells. And this woman had this like very immediate, almost kind of snarky reaction that was just kind of bubbled out of her. And she said, yeah, love slaves are a lot of work. And I took offense to that because I was feeling a little bit like a love slave. I mean, I don't know if she did any bibbity bobbity boo. If she did, better watch out, because I'm learning to defend myself, and there are many other people that are trying to walk their path and are learning to defend themselves. Don't mess around with that dark shit. In the end, in time, justice will find you. I don't know if she did, but that response really made me wonder. Even if there was no bibbity bobbity boo, at least just our interactions and the sort of narcissistic power imbalance that she was creating can turn a man into a love slave, and that's not okay. It's not okay. I don't know why you would want a slave. It sounds like a lot of work. It sounds boring. Wouldn't you want someone that you can have some sort of dynamic, equal exchange? Sometimes they'll get more, sometimes you'll get more, but it sounds boring to me to have a slave. Weak. It's a small one, but kind of sort of plays into the idea of someone being a slave. She had a strange fascination with, I guess, a couple years. Britney Spears became famous again because she had been stuck in a conservatorship from her family, maybe her dad in particular, for a long time. And for some reason, this woman, who did not like pop music, acutely did not, explicitly did not like pop music, and I never knew her to listen to or enjoy Britney Spears, but she just was really fascinated by this topic of Britney being stuck in a conservatorship, of a family taking care of a creative person. Was anything like that happening to me? I don't know. I'm standing on the edge of possibility. I'm looking out. I have not collapsed the superposition, but her fascination piqued my intuition. I don't know. Made me uncomfortable. No one should be a slave. So I had a number of dreams about unfaithfulness from this woman, about her stepping out of the relationship. They were all very uncomfortable, sort of sparked old trauma, tore not just a scab because it had healed, but tore the flesh off of an old healed wound. To have a dream like that, and I would bring it up to this woman, and she, she would sometimes address it and be reassuring, but would quickly kind of be sick of it, and who knows, but maybe that was my intuition knocking on the door again, saying pay attention. Now moving on to intuitive information cues. This narrative has been running through general tarot readings, which are not just for one person, not just sort of tarot, but for a whole bunch of people. You take what resonates, is what the tarot readers say. But because of these dreams, because of some intuitive cues and other behaviors of this woman, this narrative that kept weaving through a lot of these general readings of a third party, which is basically another lover or relationship, kept ringing true. And so that was in the general readings that I was watching regularly. And so I got some personal readings, which is a whole different level of direct, potent, intuitive information. And it's not the whole truth, like I said, keep your possibilities open until you have some echoes of that truth in the external world around you. But the first reading I had, the first thing that came up was someone, woman I guess, that I had been dating, being with someone else. And not just, say, hooking up with someone, but relationship. Also stealing money or playing some kind of game like that. Also talking some shit. Came up in a few of the personal readings that I had, but almost every personal reading I had. I think I had 5, maybe. The idea of a third party, or even worse, like a whole other relationship, maybe even a marriage, kept coming up. And there's more hints in further red flags that I'll talk about. Very concerning. Maybe I should have listened sooner. I'm happy where I am now, though. It's hard to say how the future would go if the butterfly flapped its wings just a little differently. One thing that she would say when I would bring up the topic of unfaithfulness is this line that I guess was supposed to be reassuring, but really is pretty concerning for a few reasons. She would say, "When I'm with you, I don't need anyone else." And it's supposed to be reassuring. But being in a committed relationship, being faithful to someone that you're in a committed relationship with, is not about want, and it's not about need. We all, I'm sure, at some point, if not regularly, see other people that are attractive and want to have some good sex with them, right? We all experience that. Most of us, at least, I think. Man and woman alike. We might even be going through a dry spell in our relationship where we're not having much sex or any sex. And maybe we have a deep sexual need. I've been told by women that I have a particularly high libido, but I don't care. If you have an agreement that you're in a relationship with someone, capital R relationship, it requires self-control. So in some cases, you've got to put your needs aside. That's the nature of it. The cardinal deal breaker of a committed relationship is don't screw anyone else. Don't flirt. Don't hook up. That's it. That's the primary deal breaker. And it requires self-control. Wants and needs aside. I guess the other aspect of that statement, when I'm with you, I don't need anyone else, is what about when I'm not there? She put me in the situation, long distance relationship. She was in Montreal while I was in Toronto for weeks, over a month in many cases, multiple times. So what about when I'm not there? What happens to her needs then? Very concerning. This is one of the main reasons I didn't want to be in a long distance relationship. And I told her that many times, well before she ever had the idea of moving to Montreal. What about your needs when I'm not around, eh? So she had been in a number of bands. Music was something that was very important to her, and really nourished her creative spark, ignited her soul, and that's great. That's great. But, music scene, especially being in a band, being up on the pedestal of the stage, you become a target of desire by many, especially if you're dressing up and looking great. And at a certain point in our relationship, she started a band with some of her close friends called Slut Code. Now, I say it now, and I just want to kind of facepalm a little bit. But listen, if you're a woman and you're really into some of these like modern empowerment, female subcultures, like that's great. But if it causes you to lie, cheat, and steal, it's not empowering. You're degrading yourself. You're damaging your soul. And you're probably hurting other people around you. Don't take slut as a title of power. Slut is destructive, especially if they're in a relationship. There's this mythology that is in many movies and stories about maybe a woman that is trying to decide between a couple of guys, right? And that's fine if you're dating, if you're not committed. But too often it's like a woman who's bored and disgruntled or things have gotten dry and they're in a marriage, maybe they have a family, and they travel for work or whatever reason, meet someone else at a local shop of some kind, and it's another man and he's new and he's different than the one that they built a life with, and it's sort of romanticizing this dishonesty. That it's like, okay, it's like a woman finding herself. It's fine if you meet someone else and you're really attracted to them. You got to stop the other relationship. You got to be honest with the person that you've committed to, obviously. But it seems to be romanticized, this idea of a woman being a liar, manipulating, being a dishonest slut. It's not okay. At best, I feel, with this woman and this band that she was in for a long time, slut code could be something that kind of makes me feel uncomfortable. And I told her about this a number of times. Something that, reflects badly on me. It's kind of disrespectful, right? If you're a woman and your boyfriend starts a band called Pussy Crusher, maybe you should start questioning the situation. Maybe that's not okay, right? Maybe it sends the wrong message to the other people, the opposite sex that they're interested in, when they're performing, when they're up on that pedestal and they're looking good, right? When this woman was out and I wasn't there, slut code, well, how many of the guys in the audience wanted to hook up with one of the sluts on stage that was proud of being a slut? That's at best. Now at worst, slut code is just a ridiculously cheeky excuse to indulge a sex addiction. That's at worst, I don't know. But even at best, if you're in a relationship, don't be in a band called Slut Code. If you want to be a woman, if you want to enjoy sex and that deep power that women have through sexuality, great, be proud of that. But there is something dishonest and manipulative and destructive about a slut. And, I tolerated this for a while. I told her my concerns, and she really didn't have too much to say about it. It just seemed to kind of freeze her and make her a little uncomfortable, but it is what it is. And eventually I ended things. Now, when she would go and practice for a while, for a number of years, at a house with at least one, maybe at another time there's a few friends that were in the band, Slut Code. They had a practice space in the basement, and for a period of time, one of her male friends, who knew her before I knew her, and seemed to really, have a connection with her, seemed to really care about her or something, sort of did the technical aspect, would set up the gear and often be there when this woman would go and practice Slut Code. And I always kind of had it was a little put off by their connection. I brought this up. I asked if they had had any sexual connection or anything like that previously, before this woman and I got together, and she denied it over and over. But again, at worst, there's an easy indulgence for someone who has an unhealthy connection with sex. Made me very concerned when I went and did a bit of sort of voice practice with this dude that lived at the house. And at the end of one of the practices, he said, "I'm Slut Code's biggest fan." And I had to put him in his place and correct him and say, "I'm actually automatically the biggest fan because I'm dating one of the band members." Sort of shut him down. But then a number of years later, this woman and I met this guy on the street, and he was looking really rough, but he was warm and happy to speak to her, and spoke to her for a little while, and sort of ignored me, almost pretending I wasn't there. And so he knew me, not that well, but he knew who I was and that this woman and I were dating, so I got his attention, called him by his name, and his whole demeanor changed, and his tone dropped, and he looked, not too explicitly, but everything about him changed, and he didn't have many words to say to me. And again, I just had the sense that maybe something had happened, and it made me pretty uncomfortable. I asked her again if anything between them had ever happened, and she denied it. Who knows? Another red flag. And speaking about people that had connected with her intimately in the past, early in our relationship, in that same area that the house was actually, we were walking through a park, and she saw this dude. She saw this dude that she had a sexual connection with in the past. I think they had some kind of semi-regular hookup for a little while. I don't know if it was sort of capital R committed relationship, but she was very happy to see him. And she sort of interjected into the conversation that this guy was having with a few other people. And her whole tone brightened. She started gesturing more and was speaking to him very differently than the way that she had been speaking to me. And she was talking to him, and it's almost like she forgot I was there. She didn't introduce me, and I think maybe I chimed in at one point, but this dude at a certain point I think could tell that it was a little awkward and wasn't super responsive. But this woman that I was dating in a committed relationship at that point, man, she was excited to see him. And that's a pretty big red flag. If you're committed to someone and they see an old connection, an old partner, and you all of a sudden disappear and they completely change and start interacting in a way that maybe they haven't been interacting with you recently, it's a red flag. One of the dreams that I had a number of years later involved this exact guy. Now, that experience clearly had a very uncomfortable effect on me and stayed with me. And a dream isn't a verification of anything that actually happened. But when you keep having dreams again, that's often your intuition kind of knocking on your door that there's maybe something you should look into more. And in the dream, it was almost like she was defiant, like she thought it was funny, or she was like using it to hold over my head in some sort of way. And in the dream, I was very upset about it, but I told her about it, and again, she didn't say much about it and got a little shifty when I brought it up. Another red flag. This is a small one, but she would, when we were out walking, she had sunglasses especially, it seemed like sometimes she was making sustained eye contact with other guys that were walking by, or like flipping her hair, or something like that. There's subtle cues that women use to show that they're interested. It doesn't mean that anything happened, but even just doing that. I mean, if you're a woman and you're in a relationship with a man, don't do that. That's very disrespectful. It's going to make the guy uncomfortable, and it's going to mean that other guys are going to try to make a move on you at some point. It's not a good use of power. Female sexuality is very powerful, and that is a misuse of that power. This happened early, maybe midway through the relationship. She had a blended family. She had a couple stepbrothers, and we were at a barbecue with her family, and at a certain point, kind of randomly, one of her brothers called me an AOB. Now, you guys might be familiar with the initialism, SOB, which means son of a bitch. Not a very flattering initialism. And this brother was, it was a jerky response, but he was a bit of a joker, and I don't think he really meant any extreme offense by it, but it really, once he explained what it meant, was concerning to me. He expanded the initialism AOB to mean asshole other boyfriend. Very concerning. This was somewhat early in the relationship too. Now, kind of sucked the air out of the room. You could hear crickets for a moment. Everyone stopped talking. And the woman that I was dating at the time, she froze. And she didn't kind of immediately defend herself and say, oh, why would you say that? I don't have another boyfriend. Why are you being such an asshole? She just sort of froze oh, maybe she didn't know what to say. I don't know. Maybe it just took her off guard the way that it took me off guard, but it was a somewhat early red flag. Ding! Intuitive bell rung. This is a weird one, and it happened a couple times. Most recently, within the, week, I guess, before I broke up with her, she went to visit her grandmother out of town. And just before she went to visit her grandmother with her mom came over to stay. And I don't know what brought this up. I don't remember any specific topic, like something on the radio or TV or something, but second families came up. And so this is something I've heard of. Usually it's a man that has a wife, a set of kids, another house, maybe even another job, and they're living two lives or maybe more. And it's not polygamy where a man has multiple wives in the same place or adjacent houses or something, and it's understood that that's the relationship. This is a secret second lives. And this came up sort of randomly, and it was almost like a haha sort of random little flippant topic joke or something, but I couldn't quite understand why it was spoken, and it rung another intuitive bell that sort of echoes some of the things that I heard in personal tarot readings and some of the things that resonated in general readings. Another red flag. Now, this is one clear echo in the external world of some intuitive information that I kept picking up on. I guess it relates to the second family comment or comments that I had heard. At a certain point, I got a text. Weird text. It's from a number I didn't recognize, but it seemed like Toronto number, Canadian number. And I'm hardly talking to anybody. I'm focusing on myself, rebuilding my foundation. It's difficult at times. My heart is sore, but it's going extremely well. But I got this text, and it said, "Divorce is exciting." Another relationship, long-term committed, maybe marriage. That was one of the concerns. That was one of the things that came up in tarot readings. And I got this text. Was it from her? It felt like it was from her. Could it have been from the other person that she was maybe connected to? This is all wild shit to me. I don't know. I don't know. But it was an external resonance to some intuitive information. Another red flag. Ding. I found out a while after she moved to Montreal that she got the idea to move to Montreal and do this supposed scholarship during a week or so that we had broken up and that we weren't communicating at the beginning of 2021. I was super strapped for cash. My dad was in the midst of his cancer, and the worldwide sickness was still rolling hard on everybody. And I was in a really tough spot. We were fighting, and during one fight, I was starting to stand up for myself at that point, saying, where's the relationship going? We can have kids. You're getting older, you know, we got to figure this out. And it went south, and she went out the door. And we ended up speaking again a little while later, you know, a week or so, and got back together. But did she meet someone else during that period? Was it actually fully a scholarship? Or maybe it was a scholarship, but maybe she connected with someone? Was that a reason to go to Montreal? Could be. I don't know. Another red flag. Ding. This is a huge one. This is just across the board. If you're a guy, particularly, I would say, this is a reason to ask serious questions and reassess your relationship, maybe, whatever's going on. But I wanted to spice up the sex for a long time. That was going very slow. She didn't seem to be able to move very fast on developing different aspects of our sexual relationship. Or maybe she didn't want to put the effort in. I mean, that was kind of a running theme of her not quite wanting to put an adequate amount of effort into different aspects of our lives together. But after she moved to Montreal, after periods of her being in Montreal, she would come back, and I say it now, I feel like a fucking idiot, right? But watch out for this. If you're with a woman and she's traveling regularly for work, or is actually like living part-time somewhere else, and she comes back with like new sexual abilities. I don't mean like she's just trying something new, because you're going to be a little awkward at that. You're going to try to figure it out. Maybe you're going to watch some porn together or something like that, you know. These are like polished, developed abilities just boop, pop up out of nowhere. And I was starting to notice that on a semi-regular basis. When she would come back to Toronto, she would have these new sexual abilities. Not like she was just trying something new, but like she had developed them with practice. That's a huge red flag. Bong! So I guess this is getting back to this unfair, mysterious, I don't know, reputation that I seem to have around the community, even around the city a little bit. Some people seem to recognize me. I notice them noticing me. It's one thing when you look at people, you know, maybe you have an intense gaze, or that light irritates their demons and they don't understand. But when you notice people looking at you, and they sort of mention something to other people that they're with, or there's a stifled snicker or something like that, I've had that experience many times. So there seems to be some reputation I have, and it's sad to think that friends and family, but in particular that this woman might be responsible for some of that, or even at the center of it. But see, this is one of the things that women with narcissistic tendencies can do in order to keep the man that they're trying to control and have power over in a box, is destroy their reputation, is wear one mask with the man, talk shit behind their back, and tear them down. So in some cases, this is what I heard, and I've sort of experienced aspects of this, the people around them that might nourish them, that might empower them in some cases, start to look down on them or even just start to move away and disappear. People you don't even know maybe having a negative opinion of you. So I've been writing this poetry with the shape, different sort of ascending or descending shapes, on YouTube videos for a few years now, trying to make comments and particularly empower people, try to inspire people to walk their path with integrity. The No More Funland poetry. I would bring it up with her, and she just often would downplay it, didn't really seem that excited or interested. I read a few to her, but just didn't seem to give a shit. And it was something that was important to me. It was a small project, but it was this kind of interesting, different sort of artistic venture that I was undertaking for a number of years. And I don't know if that's connected to the reputation that I seem to have. But she would downplay it all the time, didn't seem interested. And these videos on the Drop Staff Brave channel, she would never, of her own accord, watch them or come back to me and talk about them, even though I gave her loads and loads of energy for all the stuff that she did, especially the stuff she presented to me. A few times I did show her videos, it was all negative. It was nothing but negative. And some of the negativity, it didn't even really make sense when I questioned her about it, but it just seemed like she didn't want me to be powerful. She didn't want me to maybe even be as successful or, I don't know, popular. I have no following. I have almost no viewers on this channel. I don't know what kind of reach the No More Funland poetry had, but it seemed like something about these things that were very important to me, these artistic ventures, were threatening to her, and she was trying to tear them down. Now, did she talk shit about me or interfere with that aspect of my life in ways that I wasn't aware of? That fits the pattern of women with narcissistic tendencies. It's concerning. It's crazy to me. I don't know how you could do that to someone you're supposed to care about, but it's possible. And many times when I spoke about these topics or even showed her the videos, it was like ding, ding, ding. Another red flag. On that topic, mid-2021, I was in the midst of helping my father and trying to mitigate the interference from his competitive wife. And I was in a park, local park that I like to go to, and there was what appeared to be a couple sitting at a bench just very close to me, and I sort of looked over at them and sort of made eye contact with the woman in the couple, and she did that kind of, like stifling some sort of, snicker, laugh or whatever, and they seemed to sort of notice me and not try to make eye contact, and then have some sort of conversation as they were sort of casually or sort of covertly glancing over. And at a certain point, the guy in the couple said something along the lines of, "I think it's his girlfriend," or "it's his girlfriend," which was very concerning to me. I mean, I wasn't really listening to the conversation, but that part it floated over to my ears. And I mean, that was a little while ago, but it does fit the pattern of female partners that are trying to exert control by being two-faced behind the scenes. It's sad, but it's possible. And further on that topic, I went to visit my godmother earlier this year, and she was having some trouble in her family. I went to provide some support, and we had some conversations about this woman that I was dating. And the topic came to marriage and money, and my godmother seemed to have some information or opinions that were developed that I hadn't spoken to her about. I don't know if she had spoken to the woman that I was dating, seems unlikely, but she seemed to be wanting me to marry this woman. And on that topic, I spoke about not really caring much about marriage because my parents were hippies. I didn't want to get married. Didn't really care much about the convention of marriage. And if I did, I told my godmother that I would probably write up a prenup because greed and jealousy to a certain degree can be incredibly destructive in long-term relationships, especially between men and women. This is one of the historic poisons between men and women. And I didn't want that to be on the table as a temptation. I wanted to make it very clear what the resources would be and what would happen and what would go to who if a marriage happened and then eventually broke apart. It would have made me much more confident getting into that kind of commitment. My godmother seemed to be trying to pressure me that that wasn't a good idea and that I should show some sort of financial display and commitment beyond something like marriage to impress or reassure what was my girlfriend at the time. My godmother's interest in this topic was eerie. It was strange. Like she had information that I wasn't aware of. Again, I don't know, but if there's any shit that was talked or whatever that happened behind the scenes, that might have been part of it. And after a few days, when I went home, I had a disagreement with my godmother, and in, I guess, a moment of anger, she seemed to break through, trying to get me to do whatever she wanted me to do, and told me that my girlfriend was manipulating me, which kind of echoed what this couple had said, and unfortunately is the kind of experience that a number of other men that have been in committed situations with women that wear masks and like to control their men have experienced. So it's a lot of dings, a lot of red flags. Some of them, who knows? Some of them are pretty undeniable. In particular, if you're dating a woman, you're committed, been with her for a while, and she's traveling or she's living somewhere else for a little while and she comes back with new sexual abilities that seem pretty developed, that is a good reason for concern. I'd like to say maybe that should have been a final red flag for me and I should have just moved out of the relationship at that point, but the place that I am now, you never know how the future can unfold, and I'm happy about where I am now. I'm happy. I'm actually happy many days, and that's new for me. I spent a long time in the underworld trying to help my parents, and a long time dragging this woman along, trying to make the relationship work, and watering the lawn to make sure it was green, all on my own. Was she trying to find greener grass somewhere else? It's very possible. You know, I told her. It was an intuitive phrase that I came up with when she came to pick up her stuff, but I told her, you made your lawn, you can lie in it. So, who knows? I don't know, but it's too many red flags. And whatever happened, I'm glad that I ended the relationship and took control of my life, and I'm learning to walk my path to be better, stronger, more productive, and more happy. If I can do it, so can you.